Hello, my name is Katie Davis and I'm a lecturer in mental health nursing at Glasgow Caledonian University. This is my short oral presentation on dementia-friendly research, findings from co-research with people living with dementia. These findings are based on my PhD research, which utilised a cooperative inquiry methodology. And as you can see from the slide, cooperative inquiry is an approach to participatory research that involves cycles of action and reflection. And it's defined by Helen and Reason as a way of working with other people who have similar concerns and interests to yourself. Cooperative inquiry really challenges that traditional researcher-participant hierarchy, and it's really about a way of working together. So what I did was I worked with a small group of people living with dementia from the Open Doors project in Salford. And I approached them and said I wanted to work with them and explore something that was meaningful to them. In our conversations, we found that we very often talked about stigma and dementia. And so we decided to start gathering data around their own lived experiences through the use of diaries around the topic of stigma. We then used an adapted method of thematic analysis to identify themes within that data. And we noticed very quickly it wasn't just negative experiences and experiences of stigma, but there was also a lot of positive experiences, and also the need for education, the need for a core message coming out of the data. That data was then turned into a script, and that subsequently was turned into an animation, which was written and narrated by the co-researchers. So I'd like to talk about some of the challenges and also the facilitators with regards to this research. So initially, with regards to recruitment, it was quite difficult to actually recruit people to work with me as co-researchers. And mainly the feedback I was given was because they're used to people approaching them and saying, we want to do this, or we want to ask you about this. And it was unusual for someone to approach and say, well, I want to do some research with you, but I want to explore what is meaningful to you. That in turn also had challenges with regards to what are we actually going to explore. And so it was difficult to pin things down. It was really from those continued conversations that we came up with exploring stigma. We needed to look at adaptions. Cooperative inquiry itself is a very philosophical based methodology, and for that reason the terminology can be really tricky to understand, so we needed to adapt that, and we also adapted our method of analysing the data as well. With regards to ethics, it was quite tricky, as initially the ethics committee did not understand why people living with dementia had to be centred within this research. Time was something that I personally found really challenging, because I completely underestimated the time it would take to utilise and do this research. And power was something that I considered throughout the process. As I said, cooperative inquiry is about challenging that traditional researcher-participant relationship. It's very much about working together, working collaboratively. But I also had to produce a PhD thesis at the end of it, so I considered researcher reflexivity throughout the process. So looking at some of the facilitators, being flexible was absolutely key to this process, and that was being flexible with what we were going to explore, how we were going to explore it. That in turn brings in creativity as well, because if you'd asked me at the beginning of this process, wherever we'd produced this beautiful animation, I probably would have laughed, but that's what we came up with. That's what the co-researchers decided. We had some very open and honest relationships within the group, and that was really important, that people felt they could be safe. We're in a safe space where they could discuss their experiences and challenge those thoughts that came up for them. Support and training was really important as well, and we were very lucky that this PhD study was part of a much wider study, the Neighbourhoods and Dementia programme, and thus it meant they had access to a clinical psychologist for any further support if needed. And finally, activism. I was really privileged and lucky to be working with people who are so passionate about getting their experiences of living with dementia across, and that made a fundamental difference to this research. Thank you for listening.